group. We have about 14 of us here.
Oh, really? Wow.
Ranging from postdocs, medical students, research scholars, residents, and fellows. So everybody, it's just an honor to have Dr. Wilcox today with us, join us. He's a director of Division of GI and a professor of medicine at University of Alabama, Birmingham School of Medicine. He's also an expert in Zollinger-Ellison syndrome and also pancreatology. He's also an editor of the Blue Journal, the Clinical Gastroenterology and Hepatology, and a whole host of other academic journals, published over 200 articles and papers and book chapters. And he's here joining us to talk about mentorship. And so with that, I just want to officially thank you for joining us, Dr. Wilcox.
I am delighted to be here.
And we could maybe fire away with our questions and just talk about mentorship.
Yeah. You want me to just kind of open and just give a 30,000-foot level?
Yeah.
So I was lucky in fellowship. I had I went out to San Francisco from Birmingham, so that was Alabama. So that was quite a change. You might guess, most of the people out there from Harvard and all these other places, I was the little redneck that showed up out there, and they didn't know what to make of me. But it was great. I had some good people to look up to, and the formal mentorship kind of stuff that we talk about now, did I really have that? No, not really, but you saw role models and you saw what they did. So you kind of learned, in a sense, from what they did. And then I was lucky enough to go to Atlanta at Emory, and the person who recruited me was actually the chief of GI at the VA in San Francisco. So sometimes God puts you in spots. So, I was also interested in going to Dallas, but how did I end up? I mean, went to San Francisco and ended up in Atlanta. So, things just kind of work out, I guess is the point. And in San Francisco at that time, these young people on the line wouldn't have any idea what GI problems and AIDS are. They didn't really see it, but this was the height of the epidemic, and it was fascinating. You see somebody now that has CAPER, you think, oh man, I got to write this up. I mean, this was everyday stuff back then. And what you saw was really unbelievable. And I was fortunate enough to go to Atlanta, but I elected to go to the city county hospital. And I was really only one of about two people there. And it's like any big, like Cook County or LA County. I mean, it was just, if you really like clinical medicine and you like clinical research, it was a kid in a candy shop. I mean, what do you want to do? That was the hard thing, because I also like GI bleeding a lot. Lauren Lane made his claim to fame in GI bleeding. Well, I could have done that at Grady, but I elected to work on HIV-related stuff. So what's the point of my story here? The point of my story is I really enjoyed what I was doing. I loved working. I loved accomplishment, not to make a big deal out of myself, but just when I did something or wrote a paper that made me feel good. I didn't really care what anybody else thought of me. I just it made me feel good. It was my sense of accomplishment, not making $100, but getting a good paper done. And it was kind of fun. So I was pretty organized and had a huge database on stuff, all of it prospectively done. Kind of learned from San Francisco what needed to be done, kind of like in pancreatology, what questions are out there and what questions could you answer at your place. And that's what I was able to do. One thing I talk about when talking about career development really is, if life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. So if I really want to work on carcinoids, that's the coolest thing in the world, but I'm in a place where you never see one, it ain't going to work, right? So I used the tools that I had in San Francisco and Atlanta that went to Birmingham in 1995. And shortly thereafter, the HIV medicines basically put us out of business, right? So I could have just done nothing or migrated to something else. So how do you use your research skills and tools to do something else? And so I kind of migrated to pancreatic disease. Why? Number one, I enjoyed it. And number two, there was nobody in my place that was doing it. So I filled a void and used my research skills on something that was completely different from that, and kind of picked up the next step, and had some people there that I learned from. Worked with Basil Hershowitz, who invented the endoscope, was at Birmingham. I spent a lot of time with him, learned from him. So he was a great mentor. And you can say the rest is history, but it's really the point of the story is not giving myself accolades, but enjoying what you do, writing, having fun, and then if something changes, which medicine does, using those skills in another discipline. Basically filling a void and making lemons out of lemonade. So if I wanted to keep doing HIV-related stuff, I tell people, and of course none of you know who it is, the Maytag repairman. There was old commercials where this Maytag repairman would be sitting in his office because there was nothing to do. So if you were interested in GI stuff and AIDS, with the medicines, there's really not much to do anymore. So if you like research, how do you go on to something else? So that's kind of, if you will, my story. I guess you wrote in my little thing, Peter, I'm a interventional endoscopist. And yes, I do that because there was really nobody else in my place. And I kind of use that to think about pancreatic disease. We did a few things on stents and this and SOD. And so you kind of, once you get involved with it, for the young folks, you know, work hard, get involved and hobnob with other people so that you can get involved with trials. You know, you can get involved with this. I think that's really important what I tell my mentees is once you get out on your own, try to get involved. The only way to do things sometimes is to get involved. It's sometimes better to be an Indian rather than a chief. Just get involved. And the thing I would say is if you're on a committee, you're asked to do something, do a great job and be early. People recognize people that work, do a good job, and are dependable. You'll get a name of that guy's dependable, ask him. So the people that do the most are the people that are overloaded. Why? Because those are the ones that produce. So be a producer. That's what I would say to everybody on the line. Try to get involved and be a producer. I guess we're kind of starting to talk about mentorship, but I'll kind of put that as a 30,000 view level, Peter, and you can redirect me, but that's kind of my story. I'm known as an endoscopist, but really, at the end of the day, it was a means to an end to study stuff. And as I tell fellows and other things, if I never did another endoscopy, and I probably shouldn't say this, I really don't care because I just like GI stuff. I like GI disease. So endoscopy to me was a means to an end, not an end in and of itself, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think, you know, that's a very relevant story to those of us that wrestle with the question, you know, because often people think, okay, if I want to do advanced endoscopy, you know, I have to really, really like enjoy it, and that should be the primary goal in my career. But I think even for me, when I thought about doing an interventional endoscopy, I enjoyed it, but my primary goal for choosing advanced endoscopy was to better care for patients with pancreatic disorders. Yeah. So it's an important, I think, perspective that trainees really need to hear.
And I guess is when you think about clinical research, where you are at your place, is think about what you see related to the pancreas and what you do, and then you can mold what your questions are based on what you're seeing, because then you'll get the patients. Say you have great radiologists. Okay, what can I do with my radiologist that really hasn't been done, or I can make it better? Your surgeons, you know, can you do randomized trials with your surgeons? We did some of those at UAB just because we work very well with the surgeons. So what's good at your place, and try to capitalize on that.
That's great. That's great. Now moving on, just in relation to mentorship, who's one of your most memorable mentees and why?
Well, I think most of us that are mentors would say who really shot it out of the park. Usually those people that were the hardest, maybe not those who had the most ideas, but who really, you know, put in the time. I'm kind of a 30,000 foot, not a micromanager. If somebody wants to come and work with me and do things, I don't say, okay, I want draft 1 or I want this by May the 1st and this by July. Some mentors do that, and that may be important based on your person, but I kind of more leave it up to the person to try to, if they really are going to do it, they're going to do it. If they can't do it, it's either because they haven't come and asked how to do it, or they really aren't motivated. If you see what I mean. So really the ones that are the most motivated, you don't have to be the smartest, best, et cetera. Just, are you really interested, and are you going to work hard to get it done? And hopefully you'll get some satisfaction by doing that. Right. I think that's what's important. That's who the great mentees are, is people that really are truly interested and try to do the best they can and try to come through on a project. You can give somebody a project, and if it never happens, I'm not going to say, where is it? If they don't say anything, I assume they're really not interested.
I think
so I'm a little more laissez-faire. Whereas other people might say, okay, I want this by this date, this by this date, and maybe that depends on your mentee, and maybe that quote person needs it. They're not really a slug. They just need the extra push. But I'd rather the mentee prove that they really want to do it rather than me making them do it, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
But you could say as a mentee, gosh, Mel, I, really want to do it, but one of my problems is I can't get things going on time. That's one of my deficits. How can I get better? You need to give me deadlines. And if I hear that from somebody, okay, I can adapt myself to what the mentee needs, if you see what I mean.
Yeah. That's a great point. Now, before we move on, does anyone on the line have any questions related to what we just talked about? No, everybody's too shy at the moment. Okay.
I don't bite, by the way.
All right.
I'm pretty low key.
So I guess we covered, the expectation that you have from a mentee. It just really comes down to how driven you are, and it's important to be self-motivated.
Yeah.
Also communicative.
And I think the other thing, Peter, is we think of mentors as academic folks, but could you just get a mentor for life stuff? You got stuff with your family to talk to. Should I go to this place? Should I do this? What about this? I mean, life is more than just doing work all the time. I'd be happy to be the mentor for life and work, but sometimes you need somebody different, if you know what I'm saying, for your career, your family, work-life balance, all that. So you can really have several mentors. And the other thing, Peter, I'd bring up is you don't have to necessarily have somebody in GI. Say you really click with somebody in cardiology that was a clinical researcher on whatever. That may be a great fit for you. And if somebody came to me and said, well, I know you do blah, 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 but, I think this guy I could really work with, or this gal I can learn from, then go with them. You don't have to be in your division or department, just who's best for you to help you.
Now that brings us to the next question, which is relevant. What are your thoughts on long distance mentorship, and what role do you think it has in helping trainees?
We've tried to do that, I think, at several organizations, and I think it's been variably effective. I think it would depend on the mentee, how motivated they are, and how well you could communicate by phone and email. There have been some people that I've done that with and written some stuff, but it would kind of be unique to the person. Can that person do that? I think it's probably harder, don't you think?
It is, definitely. It's in-person meetings are definitely, I think, a lot more effective, and just being accessible too, I think, makes a difference.
Yeah, but perhaps there was somebody that you'd met at a meeting, let's say David Whitcomb or somebody, somebody that maybe not him, but somebody in University of Pittsburgh you met at Pancreas Fest, and you really were at another institution but liked them, and they had an area that you were interested in, and you were doing a project at your place. Could they really help you? Most people would say, sure, I'd be happy to help you, and it depends on how it goes and how the two of you communicate. But those kind of initially personal relationships that then can be more long distance perhaps might work.
Right. Now, what have been some of the challenges to mentoring trainees in your experience?
I think the biggest thing for me has been people that want to do stuff, but it never gets done because I'm not really sure how interested they are. I kind of call that at times more with residents. I call that rec letter research. They're not really interested in research. They just want you to do something, so you write them a letter. Okay, I get all that. But so again, that's my more laissez-faire attitude. I want somebody to prove that they want to do it, and I'll spend as much time with them as I can, but it's kind of up to them. I think when you're picking a mentor or working with somebody, if it doesn't work out, because some people don't work well together, you know, not everybody sees eye to eye, and just bring it up with them. I think most of us would say, fine, you know, maybe this isn't working well for whatever reason. Here's who I recommend. So don't stay in a bad marriage, so to speak. If it doesn't seem like it's working out for whatever reason, don't end up in divorce per se. Just get a separation, and I think most people would agree with that, you know.
Right. Okay, now anybody on the line have any questions at this point about the challenges that come with sustaining or developing mentorship relationships with faculty? As Dr. Wilcox said, he doesn't bite, so just feel free to.
Yeah. On me.
I'll ask a question, Peter.
Okay.
So I'm Kevin Harris. I'm one of the interns at Cleveland Clinic, kind of new to the pancreas research world. And I know we've talked a lot about kind of initial impressions with a mentor, developing an initial mentor-mentee relationship. Outside of kind of how you're going to initially manage that relationship, what questions do you think are important when you're initially meeting a mentor to see if you guys will get along and have a similar relationship?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess trying to get to know the person as a person, because you probably don't know them that well, what kind of personality they have. Maybe they do, but you get that probably from just meeting with the person, but probably, you know, asking them what their expectations might be. It seems pretty straightforward, but that's probably the most important thing. And how would they see a successful relationship working out? You know, what do you want from them? And it works both ways. So it's not just, okay, what does he or she want? You know, what do you want? And can they fulfill what you need? So I guess it's really a two-way street. If you don't think they have the time for you, they're the big name, but they don't have any time, maybe that's really not the right person. So they might be able to give you something, but not the time you need, and therefore it may not be the greatest relationship. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure.
Everybody wants to work with a top dog, but sometimes the top dog may not be the best, depending on how the time management, that person, how often they're in town, you know, that kind of thing.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
My name is Adrienne. I'm one of the PGY2's internal medicine in San Antonio. My question is, does being a mentee ever end? Do you still consider yourself a mentee? Or if not, when did you transition to being a mentor?
Good question. Well, sometimes the mentors die off, you know, that unfortunately that does tend to happen. But I think as you get more experience, you're at your wherever you go, you start doing stuff on your own, you get good at writing, coming up with projects, or being a good educator. Say you're a clinician educator, and that you've kind of chosen that track as a GI doc. We talked mostly about research, but say, you know, I like research, but I really like teaching and that thing. Then you need to find a clinical education type mentor, right? So again, we talked about research, but it could be in anything. But I think once you kind of know when you're ready, you've done some things, you feel comfortable in yourself, you can always ask them for advice. We're never too old to listen to our parents, right? So that relationship may continue. Probably you would, if it was a really successful one, you're going to be good friends, and they're going to have a lot of respect for you and want to see you successful. So your success makes them feel better. But you can still ask them stuff, but probably it would be a little bit different as you get comfortable in your own skin and get successful at wherever you end up.
Peter, I have a question as well.
Yeah.
I'm Abdullah, by the way. I'm a PGY3 at Case Western Reserve University, Cleveland. My question is, what level would you say that would be the most appropriate for a resident to get involved in mentorship? As we know, residency life can be busy and research takes a lot of time. So would you say that a proper research would take about a year or two to get the most out of it, instead of just doing something to get it on paper, and then apply with it?
That's the biggest, I guess, problem in a sense, is you can get involved in one of their projects if there's some work you can do, and you can learn from that. The quickest thing is, of course, the retrospective type review, and I guess that's okay. You might learn some methodology that's probably not the best research, as we all know, but sometimes you got to start where you can start. If you're going to do really something meaningful, of course, that's going to take several years. So if you got involved in some things in residency, perhaps, learn a little bit about things, really knew you wanted to do GI pancreatology, and then depending on where you ended up, if you had some ideas then, you have 3 years during fellowship. That's enough time to get something done. And it doesn't have to be some New England Journal paper, just some prospective whatever. I think is good. So you don't have to necessarily shoot for the stars, but obviously something more important, more prospective, either a cohort, et cetera, is probably the way to go. But in residency, I think that is very, very difficult to do. But getting involved in somebody's study and helping them and learning from them, I think, and getting, your name on that paper, I think is fine, because you're going to learn from doing that.
When would you say is a good time to start doing prospectives when you're in training?
Probably when you're a fellow. I think it'd be very difficult during residency unless you're a ABIM person, ABIM residency track, research track, which I guess you can do clinical research, but most of them are more fundamental research and they have like 5 years. So that's a little bit different than I think what all of us are dealing with more clinical fellows or clinical research fellows.
Okay.
And Dr. Wilcox, so we have the trainee committee. So there are around 15 of us, like 20 of us here. And we are from different institutes at different levels of training. And we are trying to do some research projects together. We started with some surveys and such, but what kind of research model do you advise for all of us to do together at separate institutes?
So I guess what you're doing is some kind of multi-center trials. Is that what you're doing?
So we are just trainees, like these are just trainees at different institutes. So we have not started anything yet. We were only doing survey kind of study. That's
kind of an interesting concept. It's really a multi-center trial, but not as faculty, but really as trainees. That's kind of interesting. Never really thought of it that way. If you had a group together, which I guess CAPER would lend itself to, then that could be something pretty cool. So it's not some NIH study where you have multi-center. It's really more the boots on the ground guys and gals getting it done. So that would be pretty interesting to do. You probably don't have to shoot for the world, but it would be a little bit more difficult. Somebody's going to have to kind of be in charge and make sure everything gets done. Otherwise, you're on call, then you're asleep, and then you got to get your beauty sleep because you're working more than 80 hours. I'm not like the old days, but that depending on the people, depending on the project, it would take a little bit of work, but that could be pretty cool doing that during fellowship. I like that idea.
No, I think one of the challenges of the reluctances on the part of trainees is that in a collaborative setting, only 2-3 people will get the first, second authorship, maybe even senior authorship. So for a resident to get involved in a trainee-driven multi-center study, from a program standpoint, when you're interviewing someone and they tell you, oh, well, I was part of this CAPER-driven, trainee research project. I was like the 5th author, but I was still, active. Does that give a lot of weight to, their motivation and the drivenness?
I think if you looked at the study and looked who was involved and looked what needed to be done, I think that says something about the person. Being everybody can't be the king, right? But so you're in the middle, but you did part of the work, okay, you're just a fellow. So, you're not going to be Mr. Senior Author first, probably right off. But again, it's just getting involved, getting your name out there, learning, networking. What can I get involved with next? Oh, this guy's from this institution. Oh, I saw that guy in Pittsburgh or involved with the CAPER, and he did this, and maybe his group would be interested in doing that. So again, it's just networking, getting involved, keeping busy. The more you do, the more you're going to do. You can think of it that way. Plus, that study might give you another idea of a little sub-study from that. So, we collected data on X. I'll look that up, and there really isn't much out there. Okay, you're the first author on that because that's your idea. So the data is already there. You're just kind of using it for something else. Kind of like they've done with that, the chronic pancreatitis database that YADA has been very successful at. Great idea, a lot of work up front, but a lot of people have been involved with that. Myself, other people, to write things, even though we weren't on the boots on the ground kind of folks.
Right.
Again, you get involved and have an idea, and then you're the first author and you can write it up.
Right. And I think that's the beauty of networking and collaborating.
Yeah.
If you don't get the credit first off, you learn so much from it, and there's just so many questions that you could come up with and answer together. So
yeah. So particularly if there's databases or things at your institution that are collected prospectively, that's something good to get involved with, perhaps.
Yeah.
So know what's going on at your institution.
Those are great questions. Anyone else?
Yes, some more things regarding the pancreatic disorders itself. You have been very active in the therapeutic endoscopy research, clinical research, and pancreatic disorders and all. And how much involved should we be with the basic scientists? How do we collaborate better with the basic scientists, have them involved more? And how do we set up this collaboration and take it forward?
Great question. I think depending on your institution, the basic science folks are probably dying to find you. They just don't know how to get you. If you could get them, if you had people at your place that were interested, let's just say in pancreatic juice, I don't know, or pancreatic cyst juice, or blood samples in people with pancreatic cancer, like oncologists. Somehow you almost have to seek them out some way, and vice versa, they have to find you. But to get tissues and blood for a basic person is like heaven. It's just a question of how you find them. But I think if you find them and you have some project, they'll love you because they can't get it. And you're there on the front lines and you're going to get it for them. So then it again gets back to what's going on at your place and really how you find them. And although I'm making it sound like it's easy, yes, I know sometimes it is difficult. But just somehow figure out at your institution people that may be doing pancreatic disease, either inflammation, cancer, whatever, look them up and see what they're kind of doing and maybe give them a phone call or email. But if you find the right person, they'll love you because they're looking for people like you.
Mm-hmm.
Great question too. I have a question. So you briefly mentioned sometimes the challenge of mentoring residents through a research project is that they just want it so that they can get a letter out of it. How do you inspire genuine interest in asking clinical questions and in research studies? Like, do you have a way of really genuinely inspiring enthusiasm in research and among trainees?
I don't know the right answer to that. I guess hopefully the enthusiasm that you have in working with somebody may spill over to them. But to me, it somehow starts in the core. You either have the fire in the belly, as people call it, or maybe not. But yeah, we have seen people that are really not interested in research and do something get turned on. So I don't want to give up on anybody. You try to get them involved, let them do as much as they can, let them do some writing. You get a paper out, you feel a little accomplishment about that, and they either like the research or they don't. But some people, you're right, Peter, get turned on to it. So you don't have to assume up front the person's going to be a bum. You have to give it your best shot, and it's either going to work out or not. And that's kind of my responsibility when somebody wants something, to give it 100%. If it doesn't work out, then it doesn't, but maybe you are going to turn on somebody. You know, it does happen. Or as somebody else put it, you can't make diamonds out of dog shit, but you know, that's a whole different thing. Sorry.
It's fine. Okay. All right. Anyone else that want to bring up any questions related to mentorship? Now is a chance.
So I guess in summary, kind of, Peter, is just get involved with something that you like. As I tell people, I don't want to go to work in the morning. I want to go do something I like. If you have to go and it's drudgery, then it's work. I don't want to work. You want to do something that's fun. You want to go to the work and really enjoy what you do. And I don't look down on my nose at somebody that wants to do clinical education. I'm in Alabama. We're football. So in a football team, you need the dumb lineman, you need the quarterback, you need everybody to be a good team. So if you decide not to do research, but you're going to be the best clinical educator in your division with a focus on pancreatic disease, that's fantastic. So don't look down on yourself that you're not some NIH person. It needs everybody to be on the team. Just be the best you can so that you're really enjoying what you're doing. Find people that are going to benefit you, that you get along with and learn from in a mentor relationship. Try to define that early on, what they think you need to do, and vice versa, what you think you expect from them. If it's a good relationship, get the most out of it you can while you're there at the place. Be involved, network. Obviously, when you're a resident, you're not going to know who or where or what, so get involved from the mentor level. Maybe they can give you something to do, or get involved with a project, et cetera. And even if you're on the middle of a project, at least you're doing something, you're showing activity, and you're learning from it. Think about mentors outside of pancreas or GI. Think about a life mentor. So if you're a woman, for example, you probably don't want a guy for a life mentor. What about other women that have had kids in this? How did you get through it? You don't need me for that. You need someone like yourself. So there can be academic mentors and life mentors, the whole package, so to speak, if that helps.
Yep. Yeah, everything has been really, really helpful. I think one final question that we wanted to ask you. So this is interesting. What is one thing you have always thought to be true about pancreatic disease and found out later that it wasn't?
I always thought that if you developed alcoholic pancreatitis, by definition, at that time you had chronic pancreatitis. But even though you're a chronic drinker and you develop your first attack, we've seen a number of people by EUS and other things where they really didn't have chronic pancreatitis. So I guess, as I tell people, that was like a black pearl. You know, a black pearl is something that isn't true. Some guy tells you in rounds, oh, I got to remember that because that's right. No, it ain't right. It was wrong. It was a black pearl is what I call it. That's what I remember.
So I guess the pancreatic parenchyma completely regenerates and doesn't have any fibrosis?
Yeah, I've seen that. I have no idea why that is, don't know.
It's very interesting.
Yeah. I used to think, I guess it took not much alcohol, but it really takes a lot. So to cause pancreatic disease. So I think that's kind of interesting. And Yadav has done some nice stuff. The whole smoking thing is actually pretty cool. That 10 years ago, we didn't really think much about smoking. It must have been the alcohol they're quote not telling you about. Well, not everybody lies, it's other things. So I guess it just shows we think we know a lot, but there's a lot we can do. And I think as a mentee, that's a really hard thing. Is gosh, that's already been done. What poor little old me is going to do? Well, there's so many things we really don't know, studies that can be done better. Just because it was done before and that's the white pearl, it might turn out to be a black pearl. And if you think about it and do research on it, so for example, okay, how many people with alcoholic chronic pancreatitis come in on the first time where their EUS is almost normal? Has that study been done? I don't know. We don't do pancreatograms. It's just something interesting, something as simple as that. Oh, we know the answer. Well, as they say on rounds, half of what you're told is not right, and the other half you need to figure out. So there's a lot of things we can do, you know. And if you want to be, the other thing I like doing is if you want to be an expert in something, it's always great to, as a resident or right at a fellowship or faculty, is go to the literature, look it up, write a review, and then you're the expert. That's your foundation. Boom, you've got it, and you build on that forever if that's something that really turns you on.
Thank you very much.
And Dr. Wilcox, so with all your experience and wisdom, so what advice do you have for trainees going into pancreatology with 20 or 30 years of career? So how do we take this field forward?
How do you move the field forward?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess you got to learn what we know and what we don't know. And how do you do that? By reading, learning, and listening. That's what I would say. Then you'll know what needs to be done. Then you'll know, do you have that at your place? What do you have at your place that you can do to advance the field? Do you need to collaborate with somebody somewhere else, or one of your CAPER pals, so to speak, your other people that you meet along the way at one of your other institutions? You could meet one or two people that you really gel with. They're interested in that, and you could collaborate with them long-term at their institutions. I mean, to me, CAPER is a great way to do that. You don't have to be with 12 people. What if you picked up a couple of people that you really clicked with, that they're interested in pancreatic disease, and you could do kind of multi-center things between 2 or 3 people? That'd actually be pretty cool too.
I think one of the risks of a forum like this is because we have, residents and fellows joining us more so than, nurses and research coordinators and what have you.
Right.
It becomes a little bit too homogeneous. Now, how can we promote a forum that allows participation by, other disciplines, other, radiologists or nurses and research coordinators to really holistically promote collaboration that way?
You mean through CAPER or just in general?
For example, taking this teleconference, for example.
Yeah. I guess we would somehow need to get people in those disciplines that somehow have an interest in pancreatic disease. So if at our place there were some younger people interested in pancreatic radiology, for example, that we could get them involved, or nurse practitioners that deal with pancreatic disease. I'm sure there's some around, like in Pittsburgh, that primarily are pancreas people. They should be involved in this, right? I don't know why. That's a great suggestion. Maybe next July we'll ask David, hey, don't you have NPs? Why aren't they involved in this? Well, I never really thought about it. That's a great thing. Or pathologist. So I think we got to start somewhere, but that's a great suggestion, trying to get other folks involved, other disciplines, particularly young people.
Right.
Or even surgeons, right?
Right. Yeah. Oh, that completely agree. I think surgery residents, surgery fellows.
Yeah.
And I think that just creates a better collaborative milieu.
Yeah.
Projects. So.
I agree with you.
Okay, well, this is a last chance to ask questions and interact with Dr. Wilcox before we close. Anybody else have any other burning questions?
I do. What's your favorite book?
Oh, you're really trying to catch me off guard, aren't you? I'm kind of a history buff. I like American history, and there was a book written about Abraham Lincoln's cabinet. And the point of the book was, I'm blanking on the name right now. I think, God, man, you are old. Hell, you can't even remember the name of the book you like the most. But the point of the thing was, what Lincoln did is he picked the people for his cabinet that he thought did the best, even if they hated him, because he thought they were the best. So that's actually a pretty good life lesson, isn't it? Don't pick the people that are necessarily going to agree with you. Who are the best people for the job, whether they like you or don't like you? And at the end of the day, as it turns out, the people that really didn't like him turned out adoring the guy. you know, they switch positions, but he wasn't interested in finding people, yes, man. He was interested in who are the best people for the job. And I think sometimes we don't tend to do that, but I think it's a great life lesson. You hold on one second, I'll find the book. You're killing me.
That's a great question, Adrian.
I know. I feel like he would know.
It's called The Team of Rivals by Doris Goodwin. Doris Kearns Goodwin. It was really a great book. Another great book was about the Panama Canal. The building the Panama Canal. That's kind of random, I know. That was David McCullough. He's a famous writer too. And that was really cool about how they bought it and Roosevelt going down there and digging this thing. I mean, I can't imagine how miserable that would have been in the fever and dysentery and all this. And they got over it all to build this thing. It was unbelievable, man against nature. Anyway.
There's a history book on the pancreas too.
What's that called?
It's History of the Pancreas.
Okay, that'd probably be pretty good.
It's actually like 1,000 pages long.
Really?
But it has it traces the history of all the pancreatic disorders, including acute and chronic. So that's quite fun.
It's pretty cool reading old. You know, I've got an old 1800 practice of medicine book, you know, how they treated bleeding ulcers. They, gave them this, and of course they didn't look in there, and bed rest, all this. We say, man, that's crazy stuff.
Right.
You know, we just didn't know.
Yeah. Oh, man. Well, Dr. Wilcox, thank you again for your time today.
No, I'm delighted. And if my name was on the email and the email address, if somebody has another question, somebody wants to do something, somebody needs some help, I'm here. Okay.
It is awesome to know. We'll be reaching out for sure.
Great, Peter.
Thank you very much. And
good luck to all of you. May your dreams get succeeded. Okay.
Thank you.
Work hard and enjoy life.
Thank you.
Okay.
See ya.